Hello and welcome back to another episode of Big Red Says. I am your host, Big Red. This is the show where I say things with my friends. Joining me today is Queen Bee herself, Miss Becca Fenn, and and of course the only human living actual relative that is not a cartoon to Mr. Clean, Mr. Matt Schofield.
That.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So today, unfortunately, is a sad day in the world of entertainment. So today's date is Friday, February 5th, 2021. And unfortunately, it was announced earlier that Christopher Plummer has passed away. He's one of those guys where the amount of talent that he had in his fucking pinky, all these TikTok, actors and actresses out there and all these these people that are out there trying to trying to become the big next actor or actress on the internet, like all of them combined is nothing compared to anything that he has ever done. I just personally, it was just it was a shock, but at the same time, he was 91. And thankfully it wasn't like COVID related or anything like that. As far as I've been seen in the news, it was natural causes, which is honestly is it's
a long
sad,
life.
but yeah. So personally for me, I wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about him because personally for me, I didn't realize, then this is really sad, that it took his death for me to realize that he actually did a lot of voiceover work in movies that I have seen and I adore. He was in Rock-a-Doodle. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this movie Rock-a-Doodle, but it's about a rooster that's like an Elvis guy. It's like an Elvis rooster thing. It's pretty bizarre now. American Tail. He was in American Tail. Not Five Goes West though, which is I think the more superior version because the first one is so freaking dark. He was one in the movie 9.
That's right.
He narrated so many things. Also, like he narrated like a ton of episodes of Madeline in the late 90s. He actually did 2 stints. To come to find out, in the late 80s and the late 90s, he did narration for the cartoon series Madeline. He also did. Let's see, what was the other one? I forget what the other animated one was. But the other thing was that A Beautiful Mind. I completely forgot he was in A Beautiful Mind. He was the doctor that was in it. Yeah. I was like,
oh,
what? Are you kidding me? But for me personally, though, beyond the animated work that I come to find out he was in, that I grew up watching, for me personally, I'd say that the 2 more recent films from him, All the Money in the World and of course Knives Out, were, even though he's not in Knives Out for as much as obviously it would have been amazing for him to have been in. His role in that movie was so good though. It was so.
He's a pivotal part of that movie too.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, the whole cast, even like the smallest role was played by an amazing actor or actress in that film. But I also don't know, obviously, spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen Knives Out, but he dies at the very beginning, and obviously, there was no way he could possibly be in a sequel. But at the same time, it's like now that they're making a sequel, it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's kind of like, personally, I don't know how you're going to make a sequel to Knives Out and make it anywhere as good as the first one was. But I don't know, what's a role or a movie that he was in that you guys remember him from? What's your favorite from him?
Sure. He's been in a ton that have been really popular. Like Sound of Music is obviously, I think, where a lot of people see him from.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, for me, it's a weird film that not a lot of people have seen, but I would recommend people go see. It's very good. Okay. It's one of the first films I remember my dad showing me when I was a little kid. It's called The Man Who Would Be King.
Okay.
With Sean Connery and Michael Penn.
That sounds like an amazing lineup, right?
It's very good, yeah. And he plays Richard Kipling, the author, right? Who wrote Rudyard Kipling, who wrote the Jungle Book and everything, who was based on a book that Rudyard Kipling wrote. So he plays him, and basically Michael Caine's character is talking to him at the beginning of the film and tells him the story. So it keeps kind of jumping back between him talking to Christopher Plummer and then Sean Connery and Michael Caine kind of doing their thing. It's basically these 2 English soldiers, Michael Caine and Sean Connery, who find this tribe of natives during the war overlooking I think in India, and they end up convincing the natives that they're gods, And it's basically this whole like they become like their downfall, their hubris, and all this stuff. It's very interesting, a very like look into like greed and like human depravity to some degree. It's very interesting. But he kind of plays the narrator, or at least the person who's being narrated to the entire film, which is very good. So that was one of the first things I really remember him being in. And beyond that, I mean, obviously Knives Out, like we said, and a few other classics. But for me, a lot of it is his voice work. To be fair, being the geek I am, a lot of the animated films and video games, one of the things that he's been in have really stuck out to me. So
I mean, he was in Skyrim, for heaven's sakes.
Exactly.
What was he in Skyrim?
Oh God! Don't even ask me how to pronounce it. I read it. I haven't played Skyrim yet, but Schofield pronounce
he's
it.
He's Arnbeard, one of the Whitebeards.
Oh, okay. Up at the mountain. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't put together at all that he had like voiceover work. I really like mainly know him from The Sound of Music. That one's big in my family. I don't know what it is, but like my aunts and uncles and my grandfather like would break out into Edelweiss all the time. Even in like restaurants, an embarrassing thing. They pretend they're like the Von Trapp children. So I first found out about the news today from my mother like pointing it out because she just loved that movie so much.
That stinks. Yeah. And I do have to point out though that the All the Money in the World though was especially an astonishing feat for him because the fact that so I don't know if you guys remember or not, but Kevin Spacey had filmed that role that Christopher Plummer ended up playing. We're talking like the movie is done, the movie's less than 2 months away from being released, and all of a sudden Kevin Spacey's sex scandal comes out. And I forget who it's one of those super famous directors. I forget who it is now, but they were like, we're hitting our release date and we're going to have, and we're talking like within 24 hours of the news breaking of Kevin Spacey, they already had Christopher Plummer like on an airplane flying to some, like studio somewhere. And they filmed all of that entire role within like a span of like 2 or 3 weeks. And were able to edit the film together and be able to hit their release date within 2 months. It was either 2 months or a month and a half. It was something ridiculous, but it was funny because I had some interest in seeing this movie before, and I was kind of like, I'm not seeing it in theaters, whatever. And then the Kevin Spacey thing, and then the Christopher Plummer being, replacing him. And then I ended up seeing it in theaters because I was really super intrigued at that point. I'm like, is this thing going to be a disaster or what? No, absolutely fantastic performance. But also, I had to also point out that the second scene that he's in, it involves him holding the hand of his young grandson, like 6 or 7 year old grandson or something like that, and doing this whole speech down this really, I mean, we're talking like an 8-minute long, like one scene of the two of them holding hands, walking down the tunnel, and him talking about how I made this empire and you're going to be in charge of it. And it just it would have definitely played out really wrong if they had not changed the actor in that scene. I literally was sitting there going, this is an amazing scene, but because of all the BS with Kevin Spacey, I was like, this deters from it. But thankfully, I believe he actually got nominated for an Oscar, I think, for that role or something like that. And unfortunately, he also was super close to being an EGOT recipient. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was he hadn't been nominated for an Emmy in a while, but I think he had the other 3, if I remember correctly. So, but yeah, unfortunately, we had to start out on a sad note. But he's just one of those people you got to talk about, no matter what. So on a happier note, we are here to discuss video games and tropes that we have found in video games. And of course, with me, I have brought my handy dandy state of the art spinner.
God, I love it. I love it so much.
Better than the scrunchy hair tie thing they used last time, which didn't do anything. So.
Yeah, actually, I did improve it. I discovered that I had to bend it the opposite direction and then snap off the end piece. So now it's going to be able to. I have tested it before we started recording. I have tested it, and we're good to go. So, we're going to talk about tropes, things that we want to discuss that we've seen in a lot of video games through our lives. We are all video game players. I mean, personally, I am very old, and I've been playing them since my uncle, against my mother's wishes, bought us a Super Nintendo in the mid 90s.
Cool uncle.
Which we then proceeded to. I have 3 siblings. I have 2 brothers and a sister. The 4 of us proceeded to fight over it so much that my mother used to actually go upstairs and, not understanding the technology and how it hooked up to a TV, would proceed to yank the system out of all the cords. And one time actually ended up causing the TV to fall. So I don't know how long have you guys been video gaming for? I'm saying at least 20, for me at least 27 years.
I came out the womb playing video game. No, my first console was the NES, and it was very janky. I remember we didn't have the right cords either. I don't know if it was a similar situation with our mother just was like yanked it out or what. But what we did was we were able to plug it in with power with the same cord that our telephone used. So we would unplug our telephone and plug that into the NES. And then to get it to the TV, we had just exposed wires that wrapped around the three prongs in the front. So it was really just like a labor of love to get that thing to work.
Why did your house not burn down?
I don't know. In hindsight, I still have it to this day. I haven't like whipped it out because like you can still play all the games that I like on my Switch. But like someday I'm gonna pull that out and see if I can still like do the magic of like, all right, this bare cord wrapped around this thing works. But yeah, that was mid 90s, 95 probably. Played Goonies 2 was my first game that I loved.
Oh my God. Schofield, how long have you been playing?
My first system was not the NES or anything that people probably recognize all that much. It was actually the Intellivision. Was the first system I ever had.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like the games I grew up playing before I got my first NES when I was, I think, maybe 6 or 7, 88, 89, I think, when I got my first NES, was stuff like the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on television, or like Starhawk or Zaxxon. Really, really crappy, like barely 8-bit weird games. And then I remember on the NES, my big game was obviously Super Mario Brothers. And the Ghostbusters game on NES, which was one of the worst games ever made. I highly recommend going to see the Angry Video Game Nerd YouTube on the Ghostbusters game. He gets really pissed off because it is a really terrible game.
Nice.
But yeah, that was mine. Yeah, and then I pretty much owned every system almost probably since then, except for some of the really weird Sega like CD, Dreamcast, Saturn crap. But beyond that.
Yeah, actually, I forgot. My dad actually had. So the first system that the children of the family owned was the Super Nintendo. But for the household, my dad actually had an Atari that was from the 80s. And I remember my favorite game on that system was Dig Dug. The Dig Dug, for some reason, I don't know why, but that game is amazing to me. And I think it also translates into my love for Bomberman. I absolutely love Bomberman. All right, so let's get the spinning done. And the first person to go it's going to be Schofield. So Schofield, for anybody who hasn't seen the show yet, you're going to be at 20 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about. And your time starts now.
Sure. So one of the things I want to talk about, which I'm sure I'm thinking Fenn and I are going to have a bit of conversation about, is kind of moral choices in games and when they're done well and when they're done terribly. So you have moral choices that don't really have a huge impact on the game and the game doesn't really talk to you much about. Like, I think the greatest example of that is probably BioShock, the first BioShock with the Little Sisters. You don't really need to do anything with the Little Sisters. It's really kind of a tacked on sort of decision. It's very atmospheric, right? It adds a lot to the game. But, I mean, yeah, killing them does give you a bit more. I can't remember the name of the resource you need to but you know what I mean, right? Yep. It gives a bit more of a resource that you can use. If you don't get that resource. That's really about it. But you have like an unlocked ending if you save all the Little Sisters and kind of change the stuff around. But the gameplay itself doesn't really lend itself to that moral choice to any large degree. Then you have stuff like Mass Effect, which is the complete opposite of that. Mass Effect has moral choices throughout the entire game. Pretty much every aspect of it is a moral choice to some degree. Mass Effect 1 has like the Rachni Queen, who lives and who dies, and Veermeyer, all this different stuff. Do you want to use the humans to help save the council, or do you hold the humans back, have them come in later and save human lives? It's a whole big thing. And that actually does play into the game. It plays a lot into how people interact with you in the first game. Those carry over from game to game to game. So it has a lot more to it. The issue I have with moral choices comes down to something that happens in Fallout 4. So mild spoilers for Fallout 4. But in Fallout 4, basically the big bad of Fallout 4 for most of the game is the Institute, right? Which is supposed to be a kind of a weird take on MIT, right? In that whole area, kind of the biotech companies of Boston and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So eventually you go do enter the Institute, talk to the people there, kind of figure out to some degree what they're all about. And you basically are presented with a large choice of which faction you want to join with. And the majority of the factions you join with want you to blow up the Institute, right? If you join the Institute, obviously you don't do that, but pretty much any other faction you join with, you will end up destroying the Institute. The Institute is presented as this like big evil thing throughout the game, but then you meet them and it's not super clear really what their motivations are, what they're doing, what their end goal is. They hint at it, but never really get very much into it. And you don't have a great opportunity to talk to the people in the Institute and actually have them clarify it for you. And my big issue with that is when you're standing there in Mass Effect talking to the Arachnite Queen, who is this big alien thing that you can kill that's supposed to like pretty much destroy your whole race if you kill her because she's the last one living. Your squad mates who are there with you will weigh in on the decision. They will say, hey, this is why I think you should do this, or this is why I think you should do that. And you have context for the decision. You have an idea what to do. And Fallout 4, no one tells you what to do. No one tells you what this decision is going to have, on the world as a whole that you've been introduced to. And nobody really cares either way, right? Like in my game, I was very involved romantically with one character. You build this experimental teleporter to get you into the Institute. No one knows if it's going to work or not. I disappear in a flash of light. I'm with the Institute for about 2 weeks in game time without talking to anyone else. I show back up again. They're like, oh, hey, how are you? That's cool. Then no one cares I've been gone for 2 weeks. No one cares that I'm wearing Institute armor, right? There's just nothing really to do that. And I have to make this choice of what to do. And I have no context in which to do it. And even after I do it, the game changes, but no one really has a real decision, a real reaction to it beyond the other factions.
Interesting. Okay.
Which is really interesting to me. So in that instance, like if you're going to put a moral choice in a game, right, you have to make that game a role-playing game and actually give me context to what I'm doing. Otherwise, you might as well just have me pick, do I join bad guy green or good guy blue? It doesn't matter, really. I need context to what I'm doing,
right.
Which is my major concern with that. Or if you're going to put a moral choice in, just make it kind of a fun add-on like BioShock, right? Which really didn't affect the game to a major degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in here since you think I'm going to disagree with you. I'm not. I love Fallout games, but it's not for their like plot or their choices or like the relationships that you make in it. Just like a big sandbox where literally like no one does tell you what to do. Like you're not held down by moral stuff. Like I made that choice entirely based on armor. I went with the Brotherhood, who are absolutely would never side with in real life, but they had orange armor and orange was my favorite color, and I really wanted the orange jumpsuit. So like that's why I made that decision. But it's also like when I play those games, I completely remove myself from it. Like it's just like a thing that I'm doing that's roughly giving me a framing for like me to make up my own story with my vivid imagination. So like if I join the Brotherhood, I can imagine that like at some point this scumbag who's the head of the Brotherhood, like I'm gonna murder him and take over and turn it around and use all of their technology for good. So like I don't disagree at all. That was a dumb decision and it didn't make sense. And I really hate the fact that they've gotten so good at like giving you settlements and having companions and stuff, and they don't react. Like when you put in hours and hours into a game, like there's no way they could ever like program it for them to have a reaction, even if it's not like a big moral choice like that. If I've just been out like for a long time doing a lot of side missions, like not main missions, they're not going to react to those. They only react to like big mission things if they do at all. So like that's a little frustrating. The fact that we've gotten so good to the point of like we can have like a whole thing where I build up my settlement from the ground up. That I am friends with, and it still feels really hollow. It's kind of like the same with Dragon Age Inquisition. Like you build something up, it's a little bit better, but like there's that point where if you're playing it to the degree of like I went and got all the trophies in that game, so I was putting a lot of time into it, and you're going back and forth from like really long trips out into the hinterlands, like killing bears, and then weeks, months later you're coming back and like no one has new dialogue options. It's like sad. Like notice I've been gone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's one of the things I liked about Mass Effect, I guess, because it limits your choice intentionally so that the story can progress in a way that feels more natural, but doesn't do in a way that I feel constrained, right? Because a lot of games, like the protagonist is blank, make up it however you want. Mass Effect doesn't do that. It goes, no, you are this person. You get to decide kind of who this person is, but they are still this person. They are still Commander Shepard. They are still in the military. They are still going to be a hero. They're still going to be on this journey. But how you go about that is up to you, right? Yeah. Which I think is better in a way because, yeah, it's a little less freedom, but then I have more context throughout the game. So my moral choices mean something because I have a place in the world, right? Like my character exists within the world. The world changes and moves, and people give a crap about him or her. And Fallout, yeah, you're right. It's a big sandbox, but I can like blow up a town. People are like, oh, that's cool. No one cares.
Yeah.
Right? Which doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I don't know. It bothers me because I think Fallout 4 started taking steps that way, but it didn't go far enough. So it ends up feeling really hollow.
Yes. And it gets worse with Fallout 76, which I also love. So like that right off the bat should tell you that I play it for a different reason. Because like Fallout 76 when it released, like didn't have any NPCs, and it had very little for story. You found it all through like recordings left from people ahead of you, which was funny because it's the chronologically, I'm fairly certain it's the most recent from when the bombs went off, like not that long at all.
No.
And
it's
like
also weird too, because like the lore, like it shouldn't even be livable even in Power Armor, according to what people say. Like the oceans were like boiling, the world was on fire, literally on fire.
Yeah, it's also like the most green of all the games. Like it straight up has foliage and like it's a beautiful game. Some of it's a little bit alien, but like there's straight up just like New England fall foliage, which is beautiful. I made my base there.
You and I could talk about Fallout and our pros and cons of Fallout for about 3 hours, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
I played Fallout 1 and 2. I'm a big Fallout guy from like the get-go. I played the isometric games, the turn-based combat ones way back in the day.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I'm old. Leave me alone.
I'm not saying oh my god in a bad way, bro.
So quickly, so defensive.
Stuff.
I will say before we like get sucked into the Fallout hole, which I could be in forever. I could just live there.
It's almost 11 minutes, guys.
Let's use 9.
There is, as example, as you were talking, because like I would say I don't hate games that do this. I have a vivid enough imagination that it doesn't hurt me. But recently, I did play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is not. I don't know. I just got back into the series for the last 2 games, so Odyssey and Valhalla, and I checked out before then. But like the recent ones, I've been super impressed with. Valhalla, it's the same sort of thing where like you have a character and they definitely have a place in the world, and you know you're doing your little missions and stuff in between, but you're always coming back to that. There's always going to be a set story for your character, in this case Ivor, and the story of Valhalla, like I got surprisingly invested at certain points. I was very impressed with it. It's the only time where like I usually have a good nose for when it is one of those important moral choices. And it's like, all right, I want to think about this. Sometimes I'll even like look up the choices ahead of time if I'm like, I don't want to fuck this up. But like, not really spoilers, but mild spoilers for the story.
I bought it, so I don't.
There's like a one point where you have an option, like you're like frustrated with someone, and you have an option to like react in a frustrated way. And the way that they like antagonize you, like you've had this whole long thing of like doing stuff and like you just feel really misrepresented, and like it's the first time where I've actually felt like really frustrated. I was like, bitch, I've been doing this whole time and you're gonna like question me. I've been your ride or die and now we're happening. And like literally just sat on the like screen with my like cursor hovering over the option to punch the person, and I'm just like, I want to do it so bad. It's normally not me. I normally go always with the peaceful thing, but I'm so mad right now. And I didn't do it, and it paid off in the end. But like those moments, when well done, are really good. So I can see like why you would want it. I'm fine without it, but like when you do it perfectly, like it really pays off, because like I felt like in the moment, I am Ivor, I'm making this choice, and I'm really mad.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, like, Cyberpunk actually does a decent job. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't want to go into a Cyberpunk review because I have some real thoughts on Cyberpunk.
Also haven't
the ending, especially. If you guys ever do play and beat it, the ending, we could have a whole conversation, but it's very interesting. But even that one I like because you understand who V is in that world, and it does a halfway decent job of it, but there are times where it doesn't make a ton of sense what's going on either. You know, so like you'll go off and do something, and like I got romantically involved with a character, and I would go and talk to her, and eventually there's just no more dialogue, and if stuff's going on, I want to talk to her about stuff that's going on, and there's just no way to do that. So it is one of those things where like we're getting closer and closer to actually having these really good, like interesting character interactions, like in Mass Effect or other games like that, or like The Walking Dead and Telltale is like a great example of like some of this awesome stuff, right? But like at the same time, when it doesn't happen, now that we're getting spoiled by some of these, it's like super blatant.
Yeah.
And it just feels bad when that happens.
Yeah.
Have you checked out like I know it's not fully released, but like Baldur's Gate 3,
Yep.
I think is the one. That one, from what I'm seeing, like at that sort of level of like constantly coming back to your companions and like them having kind of new stuff, that one seems promising. But I know only like 20 hours is out so far.
Yeah, it's good. I just keep getting angry because I want to play Barbarian and there is no Barbarian. I'm like, I don't want to keep playing a Warlock. Give me more classes, damn it. Because I'm waiting they're releasing a really big patch in the next couple of weeks, which I think is going to add more classes. They weren't saying it, but they're like, maybe more shit coming out.
Nice.
So,
That'd be cool.
Yeah, but I do like it. The only issue I have with Baldur's Gate is it's basically Divinity Original Sin, but it's also D&D. But it feels like Larian. It feels very much like chocolate milk that they happen to put a little strawberry in. Like, oh, it's strawberry milk. No, it's not. But okay, it's still a good game. Right? So that's kind of my issue with that one. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my trope is these moral choices that, in all honesty, they're interesting when they happen, but more often than not, they don't actually do anything to the game. Right? Yeah. And that annoys the hell out of me.
Like I was going to point out in the Wolfenstein that came out, 4 or 5 years ago? That one, like right off the bat, at the end of like the first level, you have a moral choice to kill, have one of the guys killed. You had to choose between two guys, and literally, what I ended up discovering was that I chose one, the other one got killed, and then I played through the game, and come to find out, the only difference in the entire game was that one person, if you save them, you get like these, I forget what they're like, trinkets or whatever. And it gives you more health capabilities. If you save the other one, it's shield instead. And then come to find out, like the characters are interchanged throughout the cutscenes, so they just have like the different My understanding is that I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is that if you do it, like what they did was that in the cutscenes they would just take out the character and put in the other character. Yeah. And that's all that happened, and it doesn't change like the rest of the story. As far as I remember, I only played through it once, but when I found out, I was like, oh, what happens to the other one? And come to find out, it was just like, oh, I chose the guy that ended up giving me more health when I got the trinkets, and the other one just gives you more shield. It was like, what the hell? So yeah, that's a great example for me.
Yeah, I mean, there are some choices that in the end don't matter, but they do such a good job that it feels like it matters in the moment, and I don't mind it so much. Like Walking Dead is a great one when. Again, spoilers for a game that's been out forever. When Lee gets bitten, when you get bitten at the end of the first season, right, and you know you're bitten, you're gonna die. You can cut your arm off. In the end, it doesn't really do anything, cutting your arm off or not. Like you still die, but like it's agonizing at the time because you don't know how it's gonna go, and the game is so good at like consequences actually matter in that game. You think it's gonna matter really, really heavily, whether it does or it doesn't. So in the moment, it's a huge decision.
Right.
So like I ended up doing it. I looked up afterwards and I'm like, does that actually do anything? They're like, no, but it screws with your head at the time. So to me, that's effective.
True. That is true. Yeah. I was about to say, you're sitting there, you're deciding if you're going to hack off your arm, but then even if you do, you still die. So it's kind of...
Yeah. Only because he dies at the end. I mean, that's... That happens.
Yeah, spoiler.
Well, again, it's how long has Walking Dead been out? It's been out forever, that game.
I know. I've only watched the first season, I think, or something like that.
Well, no,
I'm talking about the video game.
The Telltale game, yeah.
Yeah, I still like the game, yeah.
Oh, it's a super good game.
I have heard that there's a series of actually I've heard a lot of the Telltale stuff is really, really good.
Yeah. But yeah, I haven't played season 2. I have season 2. I haven't played it yet, but season 1 was ridiculous. I very rarely, I can't remember many times I've cried in a video game. I cried at the end of season 1. It is. Have you played season 1, Fen?
Yeah.
Yeah. The ending is rough.
I might have some thoughts when it's my turn to talk.
You got 3.5 minutes. You guys can still discuss that.
Oh, I'm saving them.
Oh, you're saving them? Oh, all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. But I do find it funny, especially from a moral choice standpoint, just because I have an interesting approach to a lot of video games because I do a lot of tabletop gaming.
Right.
A lot of tabletop gaming.
Yeah.
I do. And it's just interesting to see the differences right? Because we're talking about how like character interaction, right? And I would love it if we could ever get to the point where we could almost simulate that kind of stuff from a tabletop game, but I don't think we're ever going to be able to get there, to be totally honest, just because you can't turn on a dime like you can when it's people, right? So if I'm playing the NPC and I want to react a certain way, I can do anything I want because it's just my brain. So it's just tough playing video games because sometimes as much as I love the games with the visualization and the gameplay and all these great stories, I'm never going to be as invested as I would if it was like a human-made evolving game in front of me with like my friends. So that's always the issue I have.
Have you ever checked out the web-based thing called Dungeon.io? So it's like AI Dungeon, and it's literally like you type in a thing and then it auto generates the response back. So like you could try and play like, you know, a campaign of like Dungeons and Dragons through that way. It's a little janky still, but like when I play that, like it is that level of like just whatever I want to do. If I decide I'm really obsessed with like an NPC that shouldn't be part of this, like I can just start talking to him and make that the whole thing, you know, like it's free. You can buy a paid subscription if you want like their advanced model, but like that sort of thing, when I look at that, I'm like, there's going to be some day where this is in a video game. Like you use this text-based algorithm type model and then it can create visuals based on it. And like, when we get to that point, that sounds like what you're talking about. Like, it's still going to be janky because it's a computer, but like it's coming up with pretty convincing stuff because it's using, you know, all of the millions of things that are on the internet, conversations and stuff. And like if you can train it to be better and better by like giving it more world knowledge entries in the back end and like pin things for it to remember. And like when you get that down packed, like it's pretty good. Every so often it'll try and like pull out a demon when you're just like in IKEA, but like it's pretty good. And I can only imagine we're going to get better and better, you know, as the years go on.
I'll have to take a look at it. That'd be interesting.
You can definitely waste like hours and hours on that thing.
Yeah,
and you also play with friends. You should do that sometime.
All right, you got 50 seconds left. Nothing? All right, I can't want to take the no.
I think we should have a podcast when COVID's over where we all play Heroes Quest, live stream it, because I got the super duper crazy collector's edition that came out for like $200 something the other day.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so we should do that. I don't know if you ever played Heroes Quest.
I know.
Game. It's very, very good. Okay. So we should definitely do that at some point. But okay, that's my 50 seconds.
When COVID finally decides to fuck off, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to. Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping to be able to put together an actual studio. Because as much as I don't, obviously Zoom is amazing, but at the same time, it's just like
you don't like my creepy grandmother photo?
Schofield across the face, or at least off the top of the head. You know,
I just don't want to scare people when you and I just scream at each other for no reason when we're passing each other in the hallway. Did we ever tell that story, Finn, when we were at game night?
Oh my god.
No, I don't think so.
We're hanging out, right? Because we have a game night at our work.
Yeah.
So we were having a game night, like a social event. And I'm walking between the two of the rooms, and Jimmy walks past me, and we just bump into each other like chest to chest. I'm like, "Fuck you!" And he's like, "Fuck you!" and just screaming at each other, like, "Fuck you!" We're like, "Oh!" And I go like, we're like pointing each other. Like,
other teams is brand new, and she all of a sudden we're yelling, at the top of our lungs. I can't demonstrate it, but we're yelling, and then we just look at each other for a second, and we start busting out laughing. All of a sudden, I hear her going, "Are they really fighting?" Oh. I came around the corner. I'm like, no, we're just fucking around.
Oh, we're so sorry, JJ. We're fine.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So. Stupid shit like that, I miss it because
I miss our office so much.
Oh, I know. So all right. So next is here we go. We're gonna spin it and
me again.
Oh, it's gonna be me. All right. So I'm next. All right. So so actually, kind of piggybacking off of Schofield's whole moral dilemma choices and stuff like that. I wanted to discuss multiple endings.
Okay.
So basically, the very first game I ever played that had multiple endings was when I was about 11 or 12 years old, and it's a game called Pandora's Directive. It's the fourth game in the Tex Murphy PC gaming line of PC games, and it was ridiculous. It came with like I think 8 discs or something like that. It was ridiculous. Oh yeah, it's absolutely amazing. The game before that, Under Killing Moon, I think it had 4, and I think this one either was 6 or 8, one of the two. And so this is also in like 1996 or 7 or something like that. So that game had multiple endings, and it had 8 endings, but they were categorized in like 3 different like degrees of like, you are really good at this game, you're okay at this game, you fucking suck at your decisions kind of decision. And so there was like, if I remember correctly, it was broken down to like 2 really good endings, 2 middle roads, and then like 4 possible shitty endings, or vice versa, or something like that. And so it blew my mind that a game had different endings, and I thought it was really cool. And I've no joke, I've played through this game at least a dozen times in my life. I haven't accomplished all of them yet, but it's one of those games where you make a decision. Like, for instance, like one of the decisions is you find an envelope full of money in the middle of the street that you live on, and you have to either return it or you can pocket it. You know, whichever decision you make, kind of situation. And the big one is that your main character, Tex Murphy, is in love. Sorry, the bottom of your cup just went green screen, Schofield. It was so in your cup.
Yeah, it's great when I pick it up and you can't see it. I'm like, what am I holding? Nothing. No hand either. It's fantastic.
So one of the big decisions is that Tex is in love with this woman named Chelsea, and towards the end of the game, there's a proposition by another female character. And of course, me being the horny teenager I was, because I was 11 or 12 at the time, always went with bang her. So I would always end up getting one of the shitty endings. But if you go with, you can either decide to either like, have sex with her, or spend the night with her but not have sex with her, or kick her out of your bed. So I didn't, obviously, again, being the horny teenager I was, never realized that banging her was a really stupid idea, because you actually love this other chick. So I always got the shitty endings. But then when I got older and I played through it, I realized that was really one of the major decisions. And I thought that was, so the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that was one of those games where it really made sense that it had multiple endings. Now, my example of and I know Fen is going to be pissed, and I love this game, but Until Dawn, I think, is a bad example of a game that has multiple endings, because it has over 250 endings. How is it possible to play a fucking game that many times and be able to get every single ending?
Does it really have that many endings?
It does. I looked it up. I actually, when I was researching for this thing, I actually came across an article that said like the top 10 games that had the most multiple endings, and it was number 1 at over 250. Some of the game called like Chelsea or something like that had yes, had something like what was it, like 100. And all of a sudden, this one was just like, we have 250 different endings, which I think, and the reason why I think it's a bad example is because it's overboard. First of all, there's no possible way that I'm going to be able to sit there, and even in my lifetime, be able to accomplish every single one of those endings, because there's so many decisions in the game that end up altering the ending that you're going to end up with. Another good example, I think, of a game that has multiple endings that really, really works well is Detroit Become Human. Like, that game to me makes a lot of sense with the endings that you can get. But also there's other games where like they throw in the multiple ending thing, but it's not canon. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, for instance, like another game is like Max Payne 2. If you play through anything that's not the hardest setting, you get the ending where spoiler alert, but his love interest in the game, Mona Sass, dies. In the toughest setting, you finish the game and she survives. That's not fucking canon. Especially come to find out after Max Payne 3, the world's greatest game ever, Max Payne 3 came out, and it is canon that she died. So like an ending that and another great example of a weird, okay, at least a weird one for me, is definitely Silent Hill 2 having the dog.
When I mentioned Silent Hill here with the dog.
Yeah, the dog.
Yeah.
Ending.
So that's it.
Like, okay, so
Like you can't get it your first time. Like,
No.
that's exactly how you should do a funny ending like that. It's for the people that love the game so much and they're playing it multiple times, and then you get the funny little ending, versus like you could just bumblefuck your way into it and then it completely ruins the whole game for you.
I'm sorry, you can what?
Bumblefuck.
Bumblefuck. Okay, that's a
Bumblebee original.
I don't know Until Dawn that well. I haven't played Until Dawn.
Okay.
But let me ask. Yeah, I know Fenn's gonna punch me through the camera.
Trust me, you gotta play this game.
I will.
yeah.
I have a backlog. Well, my question for that is it 250 separate endings, or is it 250 variations off of like 5? Like, here's the
I can
ending.
answer
This is
this.
how everything happens, but like this one character's missing. That's the second. That's another ending. Hey, is it though? Like, is it one of those, or is it literally 250 different conclusions to the story.
So my understanding is that they're 250 different, but Fen?
There's no way. I don't want to ruin this for Schofield. Like, I want you to play this game so bad, but we've had this conversation so many times, and I've held my tongue and not spoiled things. But like, the ending is always going to end up the same.
Yeah.
Like, this is a great example of one where like it's always going to end in the same place. There's a ton of choices in between. I wonder if it's like maybe choices that have consequences in between. But like I would be surprised if you said there was a dozen endings. Like,
well, I know that there is one that, and I really don't want to spoil this one for him.
I know it's so tough. I want to talk about this so bad.
So there's one ending apparently that it's a very specific ending involving one of the characters that is actually super like it goes into a really weird place.
Interesting.
Apparently it's okay. My understanding is that it's a very, very specific route that you have to take and things that have to happen and everything has to line up perfectly for it to be able to
which character is it?
It involves Rami Malek's character.
Oh,
Which
he only has two endings.
Oh yeah, okay, so that's what I'm sorry. Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So you're on the same page as me. But apparently there is specific, so there is different ending. Okay, so maybe not 250, but still, the fact that there's 250 variations in some way or another still makes me go, nobody can complete that. Like, it's not possible. Like, you'd have to play it at least 300 times to be able to like fall all the way through it, to be able to even succeed in maybe getting 200 of them.
The first game I ever played that had multiple endings has a crap ton of multiple endings, and they're actually different endings.
Okay, and just for the record, Pandora's Directive, all 8 are completely different endings. Like, one of them, spoiler alert, I don't know if anybody's ever going to play the game, but it is on GOG.com, and all of the Tex Murphy games are on there, and I highly suggest you all play all of them. But anyways, one of them, for instance, Tex Murphy is so ashamed that he did such a shitty job, he runs away to the circus and becomes a clown. Like that's a great example. But the other thing is that with those endings though, with the next game, only one of them is canon though. So it's kind of one of those. It also, because of multiple endings too, it also kind of drives me a little bit nuts because especially when there's going to be a sequel or there ends up being a sequel, and say you have 5 different endings that are possible for you to receive, but only one of them is canon now. It kind of makes me go, then why include those if you know you're going to make a sequel, kind of thing. So, yeah.
Well, because my game that I'm talking about that has multiple elements is Chrono Trigger.
I was going to say, that's another game that I when I was researching this, that game came up in like everything I was looking at.
It has 12.
Okay, that's what it was.
And a couple of them have different variations, so there's even more than that. But the game always ends the same. You beat the boss, you win, unless you don't, and then there's actually an ending where you don't win, and what happens there. But for the most part, they're the same. But what happens to the characters is vastly different.
Okay.
Ending, like very different, depending on what you do, which is great. The world's saved, except for the bad ending where you lose and Lavos destroys everything and everyone just dies. But otherwise, you win, but all the characters you care about is very different. Who's alive, who's dead, where they end up, are they happy, are they sad, like how's the timeline look? It's all very different. And for a game that came out so long ago, I thought that was very advanced, to be totally honest. I mean, that's an old, I don't even know when Chrono Trigger came out, so like early 90s, I think?
I want to say yes.
Let me look it up. But yeah, it's...
Actually, why do I feel as though that might have been the first game with multiple endings? I know I came across it. What was
95?
Okay,
was when it released on Super Nintendo in 95. Yeah, so mid 90s. But I mean, that's a great game, but that has a ton of different endings. But yeah, I mean, that's to kind of talk about choices and endings. If you want to do combine what we're both talking about here, Jimmy.
Yeah,
I've always said too, it's tough to do that if you're gonna make choices. You actually have to have the story end.
Exactly. Yeah.
If the story doesn't end, your choices don't do anything.
Exactly.
Which I could translate into so many things. Like, I read a lot of comics, but it's hard to read comics sometimes because the consequences of the comic book characters don't really end up mattering because everything eventually just gets back to the status quo. It's like The Simpsons, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like Bart dies in one episode, which he never does. But let's say he did. Like, that's not going to stick.
Yeah.
Next episode, he's going to be alive again, right? I mean, there's a few things that have happened, like, Maud Flanders dying. But like, besides those small things, like, it just all resets.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like how it works with a video game.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this now because I think I'm gonna change what mine is because we're all kind of talking about the same stuff. But like I got to that point with The Walking Dead, and it might not be a negative thing on the actual games itself, but like the like formula underneath the game became so apparent to me after like
Yeah.
initially like the first episode or two, even like I was very invested, like same thing with like cutting off his arm, like those felt real. But at a certain point, I was like, I know this character is not going to go away, or I'm almost to a point where like I'm antagonizing like if I don't care about this character, like I don't care about this choice that I'm making, but they're still here. I don't know if you can maybe tell which character that is. But like Walking Dead got to that point with me where it's like there's I guess it kind of depends on like how much you're willing as the player to like immerse yourself into it. But I do think there's some like clever things that as a designer you can do to kind of like hide the intent and what actually is a real choice versus like what's not going to have an effect, or like do it in a way that when you get to the end and it didn't make a difference, you don't feel cheated. And I would have talked about this more if I had talked about like the illusion of choice as my thing, but like Until Dawn is like a masterclass in that. That game was in development for a really long time. It was originally going to come out for the PS3, and it was held long enough so that it came out in PS4. So like from its beginning to its end, it had a lot of like rewrites, and you can tell that every little bit that it does was like someone thought through this. I recently revisited Man of Medan, which was like the following sort of similar game that they came up with, and I could tell that that level of like polish was a little missing. Like so much of the bones was Until Dawn, but like that just level of like I've watched a million test players go through this, and I know exactly what conclusions they're jumping to, and I'm either going to choose to subvert them or I'm going to do something later on that like I don't know, makes it okay that you guessed it now, like it's not such a big deal. Like that game is such like a love letter to like horror stories, and it absolutely knows who's going to play it. It's the best game to watch other people play, I think. Like I've watched a million people play this game because it's like, and especially in groups, like because if you like horror stuff, your thing, and I know Schofield, you're absolutely about this, just movies in general, is like knowing what's coming and like guessing, and like that can ruin it for some people, especially if that's what you put your whole crux of the game on.
Sure.
And a game that's all about choices, like it literally like starts the game off by being like, here's the butterfly effect, we're going to show you a picture of a butterfly but it's spooky. Like that's its whole thing, and it leans into that, and it even if you are like really great and you can guess what's coming, like the ambiance is great, and it's never quite what you think, and if it is, like there's still like an additional thing afterwards, like it never stops there, so you're just like, well, I guessed it in the first 10 minutes, because it's also a little bit about like solving mysteries. So if you find the right clues, the characters themselves will learn it. So what it's like, you're learning what the story is, you've figured it out for yourself, but now I've got to get these dumb teens to figure it out, based on finding clues in games and having them talk to each other. So like in those ways, I've like one of the foremost experts on Until Dawn on the internet. I've got my PhD in it. So like I know exactly which choices matter and which don't. Mm-hmm. And that didn't ruin the illusion for me at all, like it did with The Walking Dead. It was just like, oh, that was so clever the way that they did this, because I like absolutely thought this would matter. And also like even when it tells me with the butterfly, like this had this effect, like still in my mind I was like, oh shit, like if I shot this gun, like, oh crap, I just shot the gun and only had one bullet, and now I'm not going to be able to use it later. Like I'm adding things on which not in it at all. Like such a smart way of like designing a game with limited resources and a limited runtime, like because as soon as you start branching out, like it gets crazy to keep track of all those. So like I said, it actually is fairly linear, like not to ruin anything, but like you have tons of choices and they're absolutely worth doing, but like the story itself was done very smartly, so they didn't have to like duplicate work.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you, how long do you think like a playthrough of that would take? So fairly short, it seems like.
Like 6 hours, 7 hours.
Right.
It's
like pick it up this weekend. I'm taking a Monday off and Wednesday off because my birthday on Wednesday, so it's
a great gift to yourself.
That's what I'm playing God of War, but I'm like maybe I'll grab that and run through it one of these days. So
exactly. There you go.
Yeah, it's great to like run through on your own, and then like if it bites you the same way it did me, like I went on the internet, I found a bunch of like YouTubers who played it. Absolutely recommend the Scary Game Squad and Super Best Friends Play. Those are two people or two like channels with like more than one person playing it and really got into it of like, like, are you going to play the character? Are you going to make the choices yourself, and like the ideas behind it and like guessing really early. And I love that you can guess really early on, and even if like you nail it, like you don't know it until later, or it's like it didn't ruin it all. They're still having so much fun with it. It's like
Nice.
secondhand. I just love watching people play this game and like fall for the same things that I did. And
Yeah, well, it's interesting too. Like, I don't know if multiple endings matter that much to me sometimes, right? Like Walking Dead. Like, we're talking about how Walking Dead, the choices eventually become very obvious what's happening later. I think that's one of the reasons I didn't really get into season 2 so much, because season 1, I got that, right? Like, you get that by the end, like, okay, I kind of see what they're doing here. But the relationship between Clementine and Lee was so impactful to me in that game. Like, I don't really care. I kind of want to get the wool pulled over my eyes because I'm just enjoying this character dynamic between these two characters, because that's like the whole crux of that game, right? It's less zombies. It's more like adoptive father and adoptive daughter, and it draws you in. So I didn't remind it was just the one ending because it was the story that I was seeing. That's it. I'm cool with that. But then there's other games, again, like Cyberpunk, which has quite a few different endings. But it's also one of those things you look at it and I'm like, yeah, but they're all kind of the same. And I just wonder, like, what do you guys think about that? Like, you talk about multiple endings, Jimmy, and kind of going overboard with some of them. Do games with multiple endings make you feel like they had more of an impact on what you're doing, or do you not really care? And it's more about getting there that matters to you.
For me, well, first of all, for me, no matter what, multiple endings, single endings, whatever, it doesn't matter to me. If I'm sucked into the game, that's all that really matters to me. Like, for instance, like I am totally sucked into Doom's 2016. Mm-hmm. Like right now, like that is my. I don't know if it has multiple endings. I don't want to know. Like that game is amazing. But for me, if the multiple endings are absolutely different, like with Pandora's Directive, for instance, it literally like they filmed different endings like that, I'm okay with. If it's just like one ending with a slight variation of this and a slight variation, and like for instance, like I know it's a movie, but the movie Clue is an amazing version. That's an amazing version of a multiple ending thing because it's all different.
But there's only one thing that's actually good in Clue is the problem.
Like the thing is that, like, yes, the bases are there that they're figuring out who the murderer is, but each of them are so different from each other that it's still extremely entertaining to me. But yeah, I mean, like I said, if it's well done and they're all different from each other, then I'm up for that. But again, I also want them to make it clear to me which one is the canon version, because if I'm going to sit there and I have to like figure out like, oh, I've got 3 different endings already out of 10 or whatever, and I can't figure out for the life of me if any of the 3 are canon, I'm gonna be pissed though. I don't know. Like it kind of especially if it's going to be part of a series or they're going to do a sequel or something like that. Like I want to know what which one's going to follow the series.
Now, see, I think the best game that ever did that, to be honest, was Daggerfall, which is I think Elder Scrolls 2 or something like that. It's one of the early Elder Scrolls games. It has like a bunch of different endings.
1 minute.
But the thing is, they couldn't decide which one was going to be canon, so they're all canon.
Okay.
Basically, what they did is time worked in on itself because of the stuff that was going on, so they all happened simultaneously, and all didn't happen simultaneously. And there's this whole big thing written about how they all kind of happened at once, and none of it made any sense. And then the rest of the games keep kind of commenting on that. And it's cool because they don't talk about the endings of the games. They do, because they kind of all end the same way, but your character is very different from game to game, obviously, and you can play the game in a bunch of different ways. But they talk about the hero who did this one thing, and they just kind of like push it off vague, and then each game is way after the next one. So it's more about the world than your character, which actually works.
Interesting.
In my opinion. Which I think they kind of tried to do in Dragon Age, Fen, but I don't think they pull it off quite as well.
10 seconds.
Which one are you talking about?
Well, mostly Inquisition, because they talk about the Warden occasionally, but they don't really talk about the Warden.
Yeah. Those ones are interesting. I was thinking about that a little bit, because like I feel like the ending, like of the DLC ending of Dragon Age Inquisition, there's not a huge difference between the two, but like having it, that one was better for me. But usually I'm not playing a game multiple times, or if I do, like there's years in between. So like having multiple endings doesn't matter that much to me. I guess my question is like, how long is the ending? How much content is this actually? Or does it have implications for like the whole story? Like the end of Mass Effect 3 obviously huge difference for like how you closed it off based on that. But like if it's Assassin's Creed was the example before, I don't think the difference in endings there matter much at all. It's just literally like sometimes you get a little bit extra, so like you get the base plus a little bit extra, or like I don't know, the person someone will hang around your base rather than leave you alone. You know, like those ones I absolutely don't care at all. I will like look up ahead of time because I'm like, I don't really care. I'm not super invested. I just want to make sure like if I'm losing a vendor or something like that, or these people are going to be angry at me for the rest of my game while I'm trying to clean up trophies. Like I don't want that. So I don't really care about endings.
All right. And with that, we are done with that time. I know. I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of like, oh shit, we hit the clock for once. Okay. So anyway, so with that, I don't even have to spin it. Becca, it's your turn.
So we all picked really similar topics because mine was going to be the illusion of choice, which absolutely like we've covered it all, like moral choices, endings, like it's all in there. Like the only thing I was going to get into is just like literally that cool way of like hiding what you're doing. There's certain ones if we talk about Until Dawn, like you think you make one choice but you actually made another. Like those ones are really hard to pull the wool over, especially like gamers who are like looking for that and so prone to look for it. So if you can do that, like that always impresses me. But I did it pretty well. I might just like flip the script. I know I had told you guys what my other one was going to be if I didn't do this, but since we're on this train of talking about differences, different beginnings. And I feel like that's a whole different story of like having completely different origin stories and how it actually affects the game or doesn't do jack shit. There's lots of games where it doesn't do jack shit and maybe it's just like for your own personal imagination. But like since we're talking about Dragon Age, like the very first Dragon Age has very different origin stories that have like little implications throughout the rest of the game, and they're like really long chunks in the beginning of the game. Like this is part of why I don't really care about different endings because they're like little tiny things, and if I didn't like my ending I can look up the one that I want on YouTube and just make that canon. But like play for like a full hour as like a different class of like if you're a city elf or if you're a dwarf living literally underground, like, and then later you come back to the underground area and you have all these things because you're a dwarf, like that stuff is much more compelling to me.
Well, that's interesting too because it affects the entire game.
Yeah.
Because you play the game differently in your head if you're playing a role-playing game, which you're like, okay, I'm inhabiting this character who comes from wherever. And it kind of comes back to what I was saying, where it puts you in the world. You have a role to play. Well, let me ask you, because I'm curious, what's your favorite Dragon Age origin?
I mean, I have to be partial to the first one I chose, which is I always choose a boring option in games like that. I go for like the standard difficulty always because I feel like games are made for that before I come back and like do difficult stuff. I did human warrior. I love warriors. I went with human because I find that like in older games armor and stuff fits better if you have a really standard body shape and it's always the human. So like as much fun, like I love being orcs and stuff like that in some games, but it's just like I want to go around and collect cool armor that looks cool or wear different armor for the occasion, and some of them just look real jank if you have a weird model. So I'm partial to that beginning just because it's like what I was introduced to.
Well, the thing is that's funny about that is I think the Human Noble has the best story.
Oh.
To be honest, because my two favorites were the Human Noble or City Elf Woman was really good.
Yeah, the male was that's the one that I hear people talk about a lot.
Yeah, that one, it's a great story. But I like that. Cyberpunk does that well as well. Like I played it kind of, I'm sure most people didn't go the route I did. I went corporation in Cyberpunk. So I worked for the bad guys. In the beginning of the game, you work for the bad guys and then you get fired. And then the whole game starts. That's the beginning. But it really flavored the game. Because I'm talking to characters who absolutely hate the corporations. And I'm like, yeah, they're not great, but... Because it's interesting because it gives you choices based on your life path in Cyberpunk. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of times people are talking about corporation stuff like, I don't know, corporates do stuff, we don't know why they do that. I'm like, well, I do. This is exactly why they're doing this. This is what this is, and this is what this is, and all this stuff. Other characters like, how the hell do you know that? I'm like, I used to work counterintelligence for our soccer company. You're like, huh? I'm like, you know all this shit, which is really fun. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting going like, yeah, I don't like the corporations either, however, and then how is it going to counterpoint to the stuff they're saying? So it really flavors the game very heavily. So I'm more interested in doing a replay of Cyberpunk because of the beginning than I would because of the end. And that's why I played Dragon Age Origins through like 8 times because I want to try out the dwarf and the mage, and the city elf was one of the last ones I did. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Yeah,
the city elf was so good. The Dalish was kind of blah, but I like the Dalish. But I think I agree with you. It adds more replayability than the ending even does, because the entire game feels different as opposed to just like slogging through this to get to the ending so I can see what happens at the end. Like the beginning is different, which I like.
And it like sometimes it'll be really predictable, especially if it's like a race thing. Like this one has higher dexterity or whatever. Like those choices are a little less exciting. It's been quite a while since I've played Origins, so I could be remembering wrong. But like there's a lot of times where you kind of forget a little bit, and then you'll get this surprising interaction. I think there was one, if you're a mage, a female mage, like, and you're in the tower in the beginning, you can like flirt with a guard or whatever.
Yeah.
And then later on, who ends up being a huge like character in the story too. So like that kind of interaction from the beginning, you meet them and then you go off, you have these great adventures. Eventually you come back to like a ruined tower and like he's there and you can be like, he's like, oh shit, like I stop playing like visions on me and making me see people who flirted with me. Like that was at a point where I'd completely forgotten my origin, because like it wasn't that different from human noble versus like I think it was human mage that I played. Right. So like I just kind of forgot, like it was par for the course, and then it was like, oh shit, no, I did have a different origin. And then like it even comes back in like Inquisition, because Cullen is then like one of your advisors, and
well, I think he's in the second one too, isn't it? I think he's in all three, Cullen.
He is, yeah, but like I don't think there's any like connection to that.
He's a minor character. He comes in just at the end of 2, I think, but he's in a little bit of 2 as well.
No, he's through all. He's just like a bumbling like subordinate to like the villain, the second one. And then he comes back as like a good guy in the final one. But like in the final one, you can talk about like memories, and he'll remember like some mage from the tower. Like if you were the mage version of the human, like he'll recount like, oh yeah, I knew the hero Ferelden. They were a mage. We met at the tower. Well, but it's like shit. You still remember that from like all this way? Like
sure.
Yeah, I don't know, Jimmy. We're nerding out. I don't know if you played a ton of RPGs and stuff, but like
I was about to say, unfortunately, that's like one of the type of games I don't play. So it's fine. Not the end of the world.
If you ever want to jump into it, we got lots of recommendations.
Oh yeah. Plenty.
No, I think I'm good.
I like RPGs a lot. I know, Jimmy, you have this weird thing. I'm just gonna make fun of you now on your own podcast. You have this weird thing where you're like, I don't like this game. It's too long. I'm like, well, what do you mean it's too long? I mean, just play it in chunks then. You're playing Doom in little chunks. Doom's only going to be like 20 hours, fine, right? Because Doom's pretty short. But like, the game's 100 hours long. Okay, just play it in 5-hour chunks if you can. I understand why that is a huge issue to you, right?
You have a kid.
Well, I know, but you're playing Doom, so why not play another game and then save and then put it down and pick it back up again later? I don't understand why that.
So with Doom, you have the missions. So I can play it mission by mission. I can also sit there and I can also like. Literally put the PlayStation 5 into rest mode.
Got the bourgeoisie with us, Mr. Yeah. I got a PS5.
Yeah.
Those are bourgeois, Red says.
Yeah. I'm actually, by the way, I'm surprised you two aren't shitting on me for playing a PlayStation 4 game on a PlayStation 5.
I mean, you're living the dream. I'd be doing it too if I could get a PS5.
But no, so with that game, it's easier to do that. So, for instance, like after my son has gone to bed, if my wife is still at work and I've like my son goes to bed around 6, and then I have dinner, and then I'm like by 7, if like she isn't home, I'll sit down and I'll play for like the next 2 or 3 hours or something like that. If there's nothing else, if I don't need to do stuff around the house, but normally I'll only be able to get to play maybe an hour a day, if that, maybe not even a day. Maybe 3 hours a week, I'd say.
Okay.
So that's why, like, for 100-hour game, the other thing is this. So if I end up not being able to play the game for more than like a week, and the muscle memory on like the controller is leaving me, I'm not gonna pick it back up. A perfect example of that is the Spider-Man game that came out 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. I have 3 copies of that fucking game now. I have the regular, I have the deluxe or whatever, and then I have the PlayStation 5 version with Miles Morales. And I played it for 5 or 6 hours maybe or something like that, but then ended up not picking it back up for like 2 weeks, then tried to play it and then lost the muscle memory and then lost the interest in playing. So
that also speaks more to playing RPGs, because RPGs generally are less intensive on control structure.
Mm-hmm. Well, sorry, muscle memory, and I should say, if it's really story, like I don't know, like if I forget what's going on in the game, then I'm definitely gonna not. There's a lot throughout my life. There has been probably 20, 25 games that I have tried to start playing, and then like didn't pick it back up for like a week or two, forgot what was going on in the story, and then couldn't figure it out, and then end up not playing it. So
did I mention this last time that I haven't God of War, but it fixed my God of War issue?
I remember you saying that. I don't know if it was on the podcast. It was when we talked afterwards, I think.
Because I played the first 3, and the control scheme is totally different in the 4th one.
Okay.
And I kept like flipping out and being like doing nothing and then getting punched in the face because I'm hitting the wrong button to dodge. So I just got, and the guy would hit me. But then I put the game down, like, this is way too hard. I'm never going to figure this out. I can't get over it. I put it down for like a week or 2. Totally forgot how to play, picked it back up. Fine. So that worked out real well for me. Now I'm doing great. I'm like kicking ass. But I was just like, I keep hitting circle, which is not, which I forget, which is like nothing if you're not near an object. So I'm just like, not dodging and getting hit in the face. I'm like, circle. And Kratos is like, no, man, that's punched by a troll or something.
Well, yeah, the other thing is for RPGs for me, I also don't want to play a game where like, for instance, Doom. Like, yeah, you do some, weapon upgrading and you upgrade your armor and stuff like that. But where I have to sit there and I have to like map out like, okay, I have this type of...
You're losing Fed and I now because we're item management and menu management, we're all about it.
But I will say, like, at the beginning, I get turned off from stuff if it's like really high from the beginning, because I know in my heart of hearts I want to min-max. I want the right stuff. I can't just like coast through. But like a lot of times I can just get into it from the start and be like, I'm not gonna worry about that shit. I'm just gonna play the game. And at a certain point you're so familiar with the rest of the stuff that like it comes easier. Yeah. So like you just have to have that threshold of like, I don't know if I'm about to sell something that I'm gonna regret 10 levels from now. Chances are I'm not. I'm just gonna go for it.
Oh yeah, I'm a hoarder. I'm a hoarder too. Like if I
That's why I like Fallout. You just get the hoard stuff and put it at your settlement. That's why I like those.
That's kind of the point of Fallout, hoard shit.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that if the tutorial is gonna take me like 3 hours to get through, and it's going to throw at me 25 different things to me, I'm gonna lose interest because like I don't know. I'm just one of those like, yes, I love playing D&D for instance, but like I suck at playing D&D. I played it in Schofield's game for what, like a year and a half, and by the time I had to leave, I still didn't know how the fuck to roll the dice. Like,
yeah,
I'd rather shoot shit.
I did the same thing with a Star Wars game. Like I was playing it for 2 years with Sid, and by the end of it, I still didn't know what the dice meant. Like I had a cheat sheet. I used it every roll because they were complicated and they cancel each other out. But like it was like 6 dice. It shouldn't have been that complicated.
That's
but like
wants me to get in on, and I have no interest now.
Sorry, I mean it was fun. Just make a cheat sheet. But yeah, I'm also guilty of like if there's a lot of tutorials at the beginning, I might get turned off. I did that at the beginning of Witcher 3, or any of the Witchers actually. Like all of them started and then dropped because I was like, I'm not going to learn 2 different swords. Not for me. Like how am I supposed to tell? And then I come back later and I'm like, oh no, that initial period of me learning that little thing and then saying fuck that, like it's now in my brain. Kind of like the God of War thing. And I'm like, all right, I've got that stuff down and I can actually focus on the other one. Or just be like, I'm going to use the wrong sword sometimes. I'm going to hit it for 10 minutes and then realize I'm not doing any damage.
Oh, the silver sword. Shit, which one's that?
Yeah.
So for me, the other thing is that for me, video games, they're my release. So I don't read books. I don't read comics. I watch movies, TV shows.
Fuck that nerd shit.
I know.
You play video games.
Fuck the super nerd shit. Whatever.
I have like 8 bookshelves in my apartment, so fuck off, Jimmy.
Oh, no. The best one, the first time I was ever over at Schofield's house, the very first time I was really like, do you have enough books? Like, I don't.
And the thing is, we need more bookshelves. We don't have all the books we own.
Yeah, no, exactly. They have a set of lockers from a roller rink, and that's still not enough. Like they so many books. But no, but for me, like video games are an escape. And the thing is that when I'm playing the video games in particular, I just want to turn my brain off. So the games where I have to overthink every single like thing I pick up, or everything I want to sell, or I need to know 15 different variations of this fucking sword I'm going to own, or something like that. Like that kind of stuff is always it's always turned me off. So like for instance, the only RPG game I have ever played all the way through literally is Super Mario RPG. That's the only RPG game I've ever played through. And it's the only one that's ever kept my attention for more than, like 20 minutes or something like that. Like, I actually tried starting Skyrim. I know my buddy Abby.
Fuck Abby.
Thank you. So Abby actually sat me down one time and was like, play Skyrim. I'm like, cool. We sat there for 2 hours.
That is not the RPG to start you want if you're starting looking for RPG.
Exactly. And so, but the thing, it was one of those things where it's like, I've heard about this game from a billion people. It's a $1 billion game or whatever. So we spent 2 or 3 hours on it, and I never picked it back up. Like, he lent me his PS3. I still have it in the basement, but I'm just never planning on ever picking that game up. I mean, like, if my son gets older, when he gets older, I meant to say. But anyways,
Jimmy has a lot of faith in his own parenting skills there.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking
realistic.
He's going to stay a year old forever. So
I don't think so, man.
Yeah, no. So when he gets older, if he plays video games and stuff, like, if he gets into that kind of stuff, that's great. But I'm gonna have to be like, Daddy's a dumbass. Like, he doesn't know this shit.
It's like when your kid comes and like tries to have you help with their math homework and it's too complicated.
Math, no.
But with video games,
I'm good with math. No. I'm great with math.
Are you good at like trigonometry though? My father is an architect, and I would come to him and be like, Dad, can you help with my math homework? And be like, yeah. Sorry, I do this all with computers. I don't know how to do these things.
So no, I don't know. I've never really. It's just not a genre that I'm interested in. That's all.
That's fair enough.
Yeah, but the other thing. But here's the other weird part. I love puzzle games. Like, I love Myst. I fucking love that game. Never completed it because I've always gotten stuck. But I love that fucking game for whatever. Was it 13th Guest?
Sure.
Seventh Guest, 13th Hour.
13 Ghosts.
13 Ghosts. That's a good movie. So no, I love those kind of puzzle games though, but I don't like the ones where I have to overthink it like that. And the other thing is, I think the other type of game, it's funny because I love Paper Mario, especially Origami King. But for instance, like those ones
that got hard.
You thought that was hard?
No, some of the battles at the end of the boss fights, trying to figure all that stuff out, can get a little complicated. Yeah.
Oh, I cheated.
All right, you're a Mario savant. We get it, Jimmy.
No, I will admit it. I cheated. I took a
gamer card revoked.
I would take a screenshot and then go to the homepage and then analyze how I had to move the fucking.
And you're giving us shit for like min-maxing our inventory and RPGs.
Yes.
No,
States and I beat that like a month ago. It got difficult. There was a couple of times where I was sitting right in front of the screen while I move this one, move that one. She goes, no, that one. I'm like, okay, this one. Like trying to figure it out in the time limit. It's very stressful.
Yeah. No, if I wasn't cheating, I guarantee you I would have lost my mind. But no, because like, so wait, Becca, are you familiar with the way that the battle system happens?
Not at all.
So it's a spinner. So the boss is in the middle, and then during non-boss battles, Mario's in the middle. And then he has to get, and then like there's like 4 different rings that you have to move, and then the other bad guys, you have to align the bad guys in a line or in a square, and then attack them. With the
your attacks are certain patterns. You're gonna line them up, so you're gonna attack the most.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's reversed for the bosses. Bosses are in the middle, Mario's on the outside, but Mario, like for instance, like the bosses will like one of them's ice themed, so they'll shoot like ice all over the place.
It's the worst boss. It's the worst.
Ice is always the worst, regardless of the context.
Nope. Oh no, that boss sucked. So they would like shoot the ice on different parts, and then they would rotate stuff, and then you had to literally puzzle your way to them to attack them.
Basically, the different parts of the rings will have arrows, will make Mario run different ways.
Yeah. And
you can pick up items, or like you can gain like attack abilities by doing it. Like I can attack because I've touched this square now. Otherwise, I don't touch anything. I just fall on my face and nothing happens.
Mm-hmm.
The ice one will set up this only one pass through, shows you for a second, and then twist them.
And then
so you need to reassemble the entire maze so you can run up and hit the guy.
And here's the other kicker. Here's the other kicker. Not only can you rotate them, but the ones that are crossing each other, you can move.
Yeah, so you can move it up.
They'll slide. They'll be like a treadmill. So yeah, it's.
Wow.
I'm not gonna lie, I still freaking love that game. That's a game that I'm definitely gonna introduce my son to. But the reason I brought it up was the reason I brought it up though was because of the fact that like if it was that normally that type of fight system where you have like say your team goes in and then their team comes in and you gotta attack each other one by one.
Turn-based combat.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Drives me nuts. Sorry,
I don't like it either.
I don't like
Pokemon.
it. I don't like it so much. I don't even fucking remember the name of it.
Turn-based combat. I do because it's so much in the genres that I love, and I
Yeah.
have to be like, I like RPGs, but not turn-based.
I really like turn-based combat when it's tactical turn-based combat.
Okay.
So it's a map, and I'm going to move here, and this person's going to move here. But
Like
if it's two
XCOM.
lines just punching each other, that gets really boring really fast.
Or like you're
There's
pulling
very
from a
few games
list.
I can play like that.
Yeah.
Plus, fights in real life don't happen that way. I don't sit there and go, "All right, you go first," and then you come.
I've been
How
in
many
a few
fights in
in
real
my
life for
and
you
that's
to
how
fight?
they've happened with me, so I don't know.
Oh shit, we only got 10 seconds left.
Oh.
Anybody wants to say?
gonna say something
Until Dawn
like that.
is very good. And I like the games that have choices in the beginning. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Very nice. Very nice.
But no, again, I love Until Dawn. But and I definitely got to research this now because now
We need to talk like sometime when Schofield's not here, or Schofield's gonna play the game, and then we can have like really deep conversations. But like, so this is funny. I have on YouTube one time I did a whole thing where you fail every single prompt at a certain point because I thought it was really funny the outcome, and I've watched so many people play this game. No one ever does that because you're like prone to want to do QTs and stuff. So I put that up on the internet, and I must be like the only person that's got it up there because like, every so often I'll still get a comment on it. And there was literally, it's been like 6 months since I've gotten one, and like right before this, I got a comment from somebody being like, I don't even know what they said, but like when I first saw it, I was like, it must be like Jimmy or something, like because we talked about like this is gonna be something we talked about, like he's come onto my channel to harass me. But no, yeah,
that's awesome.
I know all the little like ways either way, and if there are that many endings, I'm gonna be amazed that I've gone this long without knowing it.
All right, so when we
I'll pick it up this weekend so we can still be friends and we can talk about it. That's what I'll do.
and then if we want, we can do a whole episode about it. I'll just replay it.
Oh, I would love it. The bonus episode.
And then also when I go to post this eventually, I will do like an edit in the description and be like, just to 250 is either a dumbass fucking number that Red came up with or something. Or
I could imagine like 250 like ripple effects. Like you have a choice and then there's another thing that's changed by it or whatever.
That's
and I bet there's different like death scenes throughout. Absolutely, like everybody can die. But like the ending itself, I don't know.
According to Google, it has 256.
That seems crazy.
Yeah,
but it is based on possible character combinations of people who live, so it's a variation. So I don't think it's like 256 unique endings. There's 256 variations off however many endings there are.
Okay, so we'll still deep dive on this, and I'll post it in the description.
I'll grab it this weekend. I'll at least do a run through, so you guys don't have to kick me out if you want to talk about it. Jesus.
I want to see like so bad, like because you're the one person who, if you like, would go through and just completely see through everything and be like, I hated that. Like if anyone was gonna do it, it was gonna be you. So like as much as I love it, like I'm really curious to see what you see. Unfortunately, like you've had a little bit of spoiling just from us talking about it, like dancing around it for so long. You're gonna be like looking for certain things, but
we haven't gone into super detail though. All I said was Rami Malek, which by the way, we do have to wrap it up. But one last thing I want to say about this is that the timing of the release of this game was absolutely perfect because it was a trifecta of the fact that like this game was already like people were already like, oh my god, I want to pick up this game. Not only that, but it came out like right as Rami Malek was starting. Mr. Robot was starting to air. So you had him being in the game, but him not being really like the poster child of it. It was it Hayden? What's her name? Hayden Panettiere or whatever her name is.
Panettiere.
Panettiere or whatever her name is. Yeah, the person that doesn't exist.
Cheerleader.
So then so Rami Malek is in it, and then Mr. Robot starts, and then this game comes out at the same time, and it was just like, I think it was a perfect trifecta because honestly, I would still like to see this game become even bigger than it was, but it was pretty decent though, like sales wise and stuff and popularity, so that's good. But yeah, on that note, we gotta wrap it up though, unfortunately, because I got a cat that won't shut the fuck up. Molly, shut up.
Ha!
Hold on.
Just wait.
I had to throw it in here at the end.
Oh no!
You don't have it? Oh, he doesn't have it.
Don't have my
He
reply.
usually has a great
No,
response.
don't say it. Don't say it. I'll get it for next time.
Oh, I can't imagine what it could be.
Ah, you motherfucker. Anyways, on that note, I figured that background was going to come up at some point.
It had to at least one.
It had to, yeah.
I love you saying like we're like in a meeting for work. I'm just like, I hate you.
I do love the fact that it's pretty obvious that the three of us work together, but I love the fact that during actual work meetings he has posted that, and then I have also sat there and posted my reply. So, all right. On that note, I do got to get going. We'll talk to you later. So on the next episode is going to be insert topic here with either these two or somebody else. So, anyways, okay, cool. I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, bye.
Bye.